Welcome back to Texas Liberty Podcast. I'm Clark Patterson, and along with Ted Brown tonight, I'll be interviewing Andrew Amelang. Have I pronounced your name right, Andrew?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Here at Texas Liberty Podcast, we take liberty very, very seriously. Obviously, you don't have to hear from us that liberty has been on the retreat in the last few years. And in fact, it didn't just start with COVID. And so here at Texas Liberty Podcast, we want to talk to people who are actually doing something about it, people who aren't just complaining. And in fact, unfortunately, too many libertarians just complain about the loss of freedom in America. They don't do much about it. But fortunately, here at Texas Liberty Podcast, in just the last 24 hours, we've had a chance to talk to two people who are doing more than just complaining. They're actually doing something to advance the cause of liberty, or at the very least, stop the retreat of liberty. Last night, of course, we had Nathan Polsky on the show. Tonight, we were honored to have Andrew Amelang, and we can honestly say that these are guys they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk. I mean, Andrew's working for liberty 24/7, 365. And so again, Andrew, I'm honored to have you on the show. And of course, we'd like to know, obviously, specifically, you're running for Libertarian Party of Texas State Chairman, which of course will take place in a week and a half in Corpus Christi at the Libertarian Party of Texas State Convention. So of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts, of course, about the prospects for liberty in Texas, both within the LP and outside the LP. But why don't we start out, Andrew, with allowing you to actually introduce yourself, why and or when and how you became a libertarian, and some background on you.
Okay, great. I'd be happy to address that. I have been involved off and on with the Libertarian Party since the late 80s when I was introduced to it through, I was in law school at the time and met some people in Houston that let me know that there was such a thing. I have been for a couple of decades sort of in and out of politics, mostly apathetic, but here about 10 years ago, my conscience, I guess, got me. Watching things continue to sort of break apart. I made a decision to get involved in politics and remembered that the Libertarian Party was where I needed to be. It had the values that I wanted to get involved behind. And so it's been kind of a journey since then, just starting with affiliating the county I was in, because at the time there was no leadership there. I'm from Houston originally, but I moved out to Washington County about 25 years ago to get out in the country. And so affiliated Washington County, and then just kind of went on from there. Got on the executive committee, got on staff, and here we are. So,
Well, great, and you're still working. So your experience with the Libertarian Party has been a little over 30 years, maybe even 35 years. Is that correct?
all in, yeah.
Great. Ted?
So now, Andrew, of course, you've had all kinds of positions in the party, including executive director, which is a recent position, like running all the internal operations of the party. Now, obviously, you want to move up to state chair. What would you say actually would be the differences between executive director and state chair, and what do you want to accomplish in the state chair position?
The differences have to do with for most of my previous experience on the state executive committee, we didn't have an executive director, so the department directors reported primarily directly to the chair. I believe that the function of the chair has more to do with wrangling the executive committee, which is part of it, and creating a unified leadership. But then also being a spokesperson or a voice for the party, and working outside the party to promote our interests outside. It's not all about the internal. So I volunteered to be executive chair from my position as development director. I volunteered to be executive director to provide that layer between the chair and the staff to kind of a chief of staff function to coordinate that, so the chair would be more free to do other things. And now we're in kind of a curious position. I can unpack this more if you want, but
Sure.
As chair, I want to focus on those things, top priorities, the things the chair can do. But it is to be determined, I guess, whether we will need an executive director if I'm chair, because I am retired now and basically have a significant amount of time to commit to doing, and I have kind of a working, I have a working knowledge of how we've been operating and rapport with the people that are doing those jobs now. So I don't, we'll see if we need an executive director if I'm the chair. But if managing the staff and the day-to-day operations in any way impede my ability to do stuff that only a chair can do, then we'll bring in an executive director.
Right. Well, it sounds like if you're retired, that's actually a good thing because since this is a volunteer position, I mean,
Mhm.
many of us, like I used to be chair in California years ago, and it's a very tough position. There's so many different aspects to it, as you mentioned about being the party spokesman and being in charge of the executive committee, and of course with all the different functions, with membership and fundraising and outreach and so many different things that the subcommittee chairs work on. So there's just so many angles to it
Mhm.
that it is very hard for someone who's just a volunteer and also has a full-time job to handle such a thing.
Yes, it's a stress. It's a lot of. I want to give a shout out to some of our volunteer members and staff that it's a hard thing working with all volunteers, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we've got a lot of people putting a lot of effort into
Hmm.
trying to keep this thing moving forward. But
Oh,
it's with the
exactly.
challenges of a full-time job and a family, it can be hard to find the time. So
Absolutely. Now, another thing would be, of course, is chairing meetings and all. Now, obviously, you've probably observed two or three previous state chairs.
mhm.
How do you think? What's your experience, or how do you think you would do in chairing executive committee meetings and state conventions and that sort of thing?
Well, I hope we're about to find out. I I am I would consider myself a journeyman Robert's Rules guy. I've been doing
Mm,
this long enough now to have the basic, competence of dealing with the rules. I think what I bring to the table is a negotiating or diplomatic angle
mm,
that I would like to see SLEC work together better, and use parliamentary process the way I believe it's supposed to be used. Like, we're on the same team. We're just trying to make a
mhm.
group decision, but we're on the same team. So I bring strength to that, and I'm working on shoring up my Roberts, to make sure that I don't get caught off guard with that. But in the meantime, we I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything come up yet that I don't think I can handle.
That's good. That's
So
good.
we'll see.
Yeah. Do you think that anybody like tries to like weaponize Roberts? I know in some organizations, people like try to find the most technical little jot and tittle to try to like hold up business instead of actually trying to use whatever procedures we have to move things forward instead. Do you see that as a possible problem?
It's all. I guess it's always a potential problem. It is certainly
Hmm.
a thing. The most recent term of select, I've seen that in the past. Haven't seen it as much
Hmm.
recently. But we're about to have district caucuses and have a new executive committee, so who knows? We'll see. But yeah, that's a caution. That's a problem, and so or it can be depends
Hmm.
on who's on select.
Exactly. Well, Clark.
Yes, Andrew, as you know, since you've been involved for like a third of a century now, the Libertarian Party, well, all of us, let's face it,
Yeah, yeah.
we're all old timers. There's no
Hmm.
way to spin it. But we've been involved long enough to know that the Libertarian Party has been kind of stuck at this 2 to 3%
Hmm.
of the vote, really since I was in my early 20s. When I came aboard in the early 1980s, we were
Hmm.
right around the 2 to 3% mark. Of course, Ed Clark, when he ran for president, he had David Koch's money, and so I believe he got somewhere in that. Well, he got less than 1 million votes, but it was well over 500,000 votes. But in any event, unless it's a two-person race with just an incumbent, one of the two big parties and the LP, we seem to be just stuck in this 2 to 3% range. And, you know, if you're like me, I think it's going to take the next generation. When I see these little kids, you know, these 5-year-olds running around, that's the future for the LP. But now other people seem to think that it's just a matter of what the LP's doing. We're not doing the right thing. And, you know, liberty is right around the corner. Now, you know, well, I don't really happen to believe that, but what are your thoughts? I mean, why have we been stuck at that 2 to 3% range really since as long as you've been involved, and well, since as long as all three of us have been involved? And is there anything that can break us out to where we'll get to, let's say, 10% and maybe change the whole system?
I think there is. In fact, that's one of the reasons I wanted to run for chair, is because I do not want to miss this opportunity. And I know, I mean, people have been talking about libertarian moment. You know, this is it. This is the big one, right? This is going to be different this time. But I think the decade we're in right now is qualitatively different than what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 or 4. And I think before we just hadn't. I think there are two things. There are two things about this. We just hadn't reached the pain threshold. I think that you know, the late 20th century, things were pretty comfy in a way. I mean, we had our disasters, our problems, our conflicts, you know, but I mean, I'm not saying the Vietnam War didn't happen or something, but like there, rank and file life here in the United States wasn't that bad. And I think we're always going to appeal to a certain percentage of people who are kind of, you know, malcontents or, you know, for various reasons are oppositional to the regime, you know, the status quo. But we are, or at least what I think I'm seeing, is more discouragement, more people getting frustrated and terminally unhappy with their own political party, starting to ask that question about, you know, why do things just always keep getting worse? Certain things, certain important metrics like involvement in foreign wars, total debt, deficit spending, like there's certain things that are just always, they never get better. Race relationships aren't getting any better. We have a lot of problems, and I feel like we're reaching a pain threshold where more people will take that seriously. And so I think we have an opportunity here to grow rapidly if, point number 2, if we can target our messaging towards what I'll say among the three of us. I mean, I guess I know this will be published, but normies, like, in other words, non-libertarian, outside the party, people who are just starting to think that maybe something is substantially wrong and maybe they need to look somewhere for new ideas. We need to be able to present those people in a kind and comforting and welcoming way with solutions to their practical problems. I'm afraid that in my experience, other people's experience may vary. I've had my own, you know, set of encounters, but I've seen what I believe is a disproportionate amount of internal bickering over philosophical principles and ideas about how things ought to be, but because within our silo, we're the good guys. We're the guys that got it right. Everybody else is just either ignorant or, you know, possibly, you know, evil or something. But so that's why we're not getting our message across. And it could be that our message that, hey, we're right and you're stupid, is not an effective message. So I'd like to see us really speaking to, and it's going to be different. It's going to be different for different people. For one guy, it might be the fact that his property taxes just doubled, and for another guy, he started a small business, but it failed because he couldn't keep up with the regulatory environment he had to operate in. Somebody else might be going through a divorce and realize how broken our family courts are. You know, like there's all of these different things that are real problems for real people, and that's where we need to target our messaging. And it's not all. I guess one thing I'd like to add to that as a corollary is it's got to be positive messaging. We have to build something. We have to solve problems. We have to help people have a better life. We can't, I mean, it's hard to pass up an opportunity to point out something the Republicans did or the Democrats did that's stupid or counterproductive or possibly wicked, you know, but that can't dominate our messaging. We can't just spend all of our time dunking on the other parties and then, you know, beat our chest and say, you know, look what I did. We have to be helping people.
Right.
What do you think is
else
the best way? Yeah, what do you think is the best way to do that, to help people or let them know that we're on their side?
Boots on the ground, I think, relationally,
Mm,
which focuses on local relationships, not just political campaigns, but civic involvement, volunteer work. Um, I'm a fan of what Spike Cohen's doing with You're the
mm.
Power and
Oh, yeah.
activism, getting people engaged in their communities to right wrongs and try to put pressure on government from outside the government. You know, not be the government, but just
Mm,
pressure the government to do the right thing. Even like appointed local positions, non-elected, nonpartisan or non-elected positions where people can get in and develop a reputation in their community, that then would inspire people to vote for that person should they
mhm,
run for state legislature or state judge or something. So
mhm.
Yes, and I guess I should mention, like I did last night with Nathan, Andrew.
mhm.
Right now, the libertarians in Texas seem to be somewhat, I guess you could say, factionalized. We have
Yeah.
a strong Mises caucus here in Texas. Of
Mhm.
course, we didn't have that, well, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And so, I mean, do you see your role if you are elected in a week and a half? Would one of your roles be to help bring in the Mises people? It seems as if a lot of them are, I don't want to say operating their own party on the side, but sometimes when I go online, it seems like that's their, in some ways, that's kind of what's happening. We've got this kind of this rift. It's almost mirroring America at large. We just have this rift. So do you see your election as an opportunity to help bring some of those Mises people who, again, it seems like they donate more money to Texas Mises than they do to LP Texas. So what is your position on that, Andrew?
Well, you may not feel comfortable saying it, but I don't mind, since I've been dealing with this as executive director. I think the last couple of years have been problematic. I think it's been bad for all of us. And for a season, for a time, it really did feel like they were just running a shadow party. Like basically, they had their own donor lists and fundraising drives, running their own events, often parallel to our events. Like taking membership and new people away from the things we were doing, competition, competing with us, I guess. And so, and by us, I mean the LP Texas leadership. I think that has dissipated somewhat. And I think to a certain extent, some players on both sides of the more hostile bell curve, the long tail here, the Mises and the anti-Mises types, some of them I think are tired of the internal factionalism and ready to. I think it's time to try to heal some wounds and to figure out how to work together. That's not only, that's a high priority for me. That's a strategic priority. I am mission focused. I consider this factionalism to be a form of identity politics. Like I want to work with people who want to work. I do not want to work with people who want to fuss and bicker and fight about propositions that don't go to the heart of, are we winning? Like, are we growing? Are we adding new donors? Did we get more volunteers at that last event than we got at the one before that? Like, there's ways to measure whether you're winning or not. And running off other donors or running off other volunteers because they feel they have a different point of view on a particular hot button issue or something like that is not the way to grow the party. So we have to figure out. The good news is if we could solve this problem within the party, we could take what we've learned and start solving the problem out in the culture. Because the fundamental equation here is we have to figure out what are the things we can collaborate on, that we can work together on, and what are the things we're just going to have to agree to disagree on, and just leave each other alone to do it the way we think it should be done. I mean, just a simple illustration of that would just be like, maybe one person thinks that, free the weed and decriminalizing cannabis is the most important issue that we have, some other person may think that fighting property taxes or something is the most important thing we can do. Those two people can argue about what we're all going to do, or they can go off and apply themselves together with other people that share their priorities, and then we'll all profit, we'll all benefit because more stuff's getting done. And so that kind of, why are we here? What do we want to move forward? How are we going to work together? What's kind of off limits, or it's not productive, it doesn't advance the mission. And that's been a problem. Fortunately, I think it takes a lot of effort to stay bitter. It takes a lot of effort to hold a grudge. It takes a lot of effort to remind yourself that you don't like somebody because of who they hang out with, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people are just getting tired of it. I think we could, if we're careful, I think we could move on. And that's one of my motivations for running as chair. Historically, I am neither pro Mises nor anti Mises. I just see the whole sort of cultural break that we've gone through, and the animosity that we were seeing a couple of years ago in the run up to the convention 2 years ago. I just see that whole thing as sort of a trauma that the party experienced. And now it's time to kind of get over it and work together. Anybody who wants to work, let's work together. That's how I feel about it.
Well, and as a quick follow-up, just a quick follow-up here, Andrew. So can we assume then that even if your campaign is not successful next weekend in Corpus, that you'll continue fighting the good fight within LP Texas?
Maybe. Let me address that, because it's yes. The answer is unequivocally yes, as far as wanting to continue to stay involved in libertarian politics. I am also in a position where I'm very careful with how I use my time and what I apply myself to. And I guess I'm going to come out. I'm just going to say this. I like Mr. Polsky. He's been an asset to the party. He's been,
and he said the same. He said the same about you, by the way.
Yeah, good. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. The difference, I guess, is that I think in this matter, in the matter of being chair of LP Texas at this time in our evolution, I don't think he's ready for that. Obviously, some people do think he's ready for that, and they're going to back him for chair. But I would not have run. This wasn't on my bucket list or my bingo card or whatever. If someone else had put their hat in the ring that I could get behind and support, then I would take a supportive role. So this is just, I kind of tell the truth, even when maybe it may or may not turn out to have been in my best interest to say it out loud. But the truth of the situation is that if the convention body really thinks that Nathan's the guy to lead the way into the whatever it is we're getting ourselves into, then I'm going to take that as a cue to commit myself 100% to development in Washington County and local community building. So I'll be doing all the things. I'll be doing all the things that I'm saying are important, but I'll be doing them myself, shirt sleeves rolled up, boots on the ground, meeting with people, having coffee with people, one-on-one conversations, instead of running the party, so that's the difference.
Okay, well, let's assuming that you are elected, say you are elected next weekend, what would be your hitting the ground running, like in the first month or so? What do you think would be the most important thing for you to do?
Top priority, the top strategic priority, I think, is to unify the party and figure out who's in and who's out, and who's willing to work. And my top operational priority is that I think we could do staff better. I think the organization chart we have right now, to me, is kind of like a suit that doesn't quite fit. It's not who we are. It's not the way things actually get done in the party. And I'd like to think that through and see if we can conform our policy organization to what actually happens. And here's the credit where credit is due. One of the things I've watched the Mises Caucus do successfully is grow very quickly, because they were able to pull people together and plug them in and get them engaged and working on a mission that with a shared interest. But a lot of time and effort was put into events, pulling people together, building camaraderie, unit cohesion. And so we need a lot of time spent on social media, a lot of time spent bickering and or proclaiming stuff on social media, and then arguing with everybody in the comments, stuff like that. And so I want to pull together the existing staff, and probably some other people who either have been staff in the past or have other reason to be included in this. I want to do some serious brainstorming about how we can reformat the party or reformat the staff, and then that will be my first challenge with the executive committee in terms of any kind of leadership that I would bring to the table, would be unifying the executive committee behind a vision for what kind of operational unit we could have, if that makes sense. So it's kind of the visible agenda would be, we need to reformulate the staff. The implied agenda, or the subtext would be, and we're going to all have to work together to do this. So let's all work together. That's how I tend to spend the time between state convention and national convention.
Okay. Now, what's your view of making a smaller executive committee? There's a proposal to pretty much halve the number of state Senate reps to 1 instead of 2. Do you think a lean, mean select would be better, or is it better to have the larger number of people on there?
I'm not a fan of this proposal. And again, here we go. You're asking a question, so I'm giving you the answers. But I am likely to oppose this proposal. In debate, I will express my concerns. That doesn't mean I'm not necessarily opposed to shrinking the size. It has been a question that's been in my mind a lot over the last year or so. Is for the amount of hardworking volunteers that we have, the amount of donors we have, the amount of people that you would say make up the active party, not people that just vote Libertarian but don't want any of their friends to know that they voted Libertarian. But I mean, people who are actually working, right? Or giving money. It's not, I mean, I don't think we need a committee of 60 people or a staff of 40 people to do what needs to be done for that group. Maybe someday. Today it's a little unwieldy, it's a little top heavy. So I was in favor of, I was actually on the rules committee that proposed a proposal. The format of the two reps per Senate district is based on the law for primary parties. Like, they're required by law to have an executive committee that has 2, but they're much bigger parties, and it's proportionally, it makes more sense. We had a proposal a couple of years ago where we would keep that sort of look and feel, but we would make 1 a delegate and 1 an alternate. So now each Senate district would have representation. They would also have backup. One of the things that has been historically true while I've been involved, I guess 4 and a half terms now. I'd have to do the math. It's either 3.5 or 4.5 terms. Is the attrition. A lot of people come in at convention and they want to get on select because they think it's going to be great. And then over the course of, year and a half, they start getting exhausted, or stuff comes up, or they're not free that weekend. And then the next thing, we always start the term with somewhere between, high 50s and low 60s on the executive committee, and end the term with 40 something on the executive committee. And if we did the delegate alternate plan, I think we'd be more consistent, be more like a predictable throughout the term. So that was my favorite. The way they have it organized right now, I'm planning to dive deeper into the rules proposals and make sure I'm not missing anything. Maybe I missed some detail in the way it's supposed to work. But as I understand it, I'm not a fan of the existing proposal.
Okay. What do you think of having at-large members? I know other states have at-large like all the delegates would elect a few of the select members.
Well, I don't have any strong feelings about that. I mean, it's one way to do it. I'm not sure it adds value. We're not in a position where we need more people on select,
Right.
you know, so I wouldn't add that. And so I don't know. I don't know how that makes it better. I would like it as simple as possible to do the job that needs to get done. I don't think additional complexity is going to make it any easier or more efficient to get things done.
Right. Sounds reasonable.
Well, Andrew, let me ask you about your position on the financial situation of LP Texas.
Okay.
You would know more than others. Now, I've been told by people
Yeah,
that right now LP Texas is basically spending more than it's bringing in. So I don't. Can you speak to the current financial situation of LP Texas, both
yeah.
last year and this year?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be happy to. I don't know who's saying that, but but that person is misinformed. And I can guess, like I can track the reasoning that would probably cause somebody to think that or say that. But the situation we're in now is we have positive cash flow on our monthly donations and expenses. We have, as of the last time I checked the bank balances, which is this morning, we've got enough money in the bank to float for 2 years, even if we weren't bringing any money in. So I'm not really sure what the fact, what the evidence is in support of that allegation. I think what's confusing people is that we've been a little bit whipsawed, and I'm probably responsible for some of it. So I'll just take the blame or the credit for that. But in 2021, 22, I and some other people raised a lot of money, and then in 22, 23, we spent a lot of money. Now we're kind of in the middle, and part of that was a backlash. We raised a lot of money at a time that we were running out of money. We deployed that in different ways. But then, last year, odd year, non-election year, kind of a slow year, other than a successful fundraising drive in support of our legislative action campaign. We had a dedicated fundraise for that, but membership's was falling off during 23. There's not really things to get people excited once the legislative session's out. And then, I mean, I know they had the special sessions, but basically it's back to school. Everybody gets back in the grind. And, in context, we're in the middle of a runaway inflation that's causing people a lot of economic grief. So things slowed down a lot in 23. We did not repeat our fundraising of 22, but I haven't seen anything yet. I've been in startup situations that looked a lot hairier than this, and we made it out. So I'm not concerned. Right now, we're in a now part of what's helping right now is my resigning from the paid XD position, taking my salary out of the equation was a chunk of that. It wasn't the whole explanation, but it's part of it. But the way our budgeted spending is now, we are making enough money to cover our nut and then some. And as we progress into the year, once we get through convention and everybody, well, we had a great convention fundraise in 22 at our gala, and I hope we'll be able to, lightning will strike twice, and we'll have donors, see the merit in getting behind what we're trying to do this year at this convention. It's a smaller convention. It's these are tough times. There's not as many people staying active, but with or without, our convention is making money. Our operations are making money. And if the normal excitement and buildup of having a presidential campaign pulls more people into the party like it did in 20, then we'll have a chance to pump things back up. So I personally am, and I'm in the books every day. I mean, we're working on cleaning up some old stuff right now that like I'm very much aware of what our financial situation actually is. And so So I'm not sure. I think what's happening is people are, or whatever you've been told is based on either partial information or like a misunderstanding of the information that's out there. Things seem pretty fat. Things weren't as fat, and we were spending money, so we made some corrections. Things are going well right now, and looking good in the near future. So that's where we are. That's the math of it. That's where we are.
That
Great.
sounds good.
Well, we have just under 2 minutes. So why don't we give you, Andrew, a chance, if you'd like, to make, a 1 minute closing statement, closing, position on your race.
Okay. I'd just like to say that I hope anybody watching this that is a delegate or alternate at the Corpus Convention will vote for me. I think I have the skills, experience, and relationships, network within the Libertarian Party to do a good job for the party. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Corpus.
Great. Well, Ted, do you have any last words?
No, I'll just say thanks, Andrew, for coming on. That was very enlightening, and good luck next weekend.
It's my pleasure, and thank you all for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Sure. And let me just, I will let you know as soon as this podcast drops. It should be within the next day, Andrew, probably by tomorrow. I was able to get the show from last night up pretty quickly as well. So, well, let me just sign out by saying that tyranny exists when the people fear the government. Liberty exists when the government fears the people. So please go out and let the government know that you're not scared of them. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks.